Shalom and welcome to this edition of Revealing the Truth, where we cover the headlines, the heartlines, and biblical truth. I'm your host, the Reverend Rabbi Eric Walker. Millennials. It seems the very mention of the word draws equally passionate and polarized responses from society members of all ages. With labels such as the unreachable generation, the me generation, and the worst generation, it's no wonder that our young people are the most notorious this world has ever seen. But beneath the surface, crises linger, which drive an individual to wonder what's really going on within the minds of our youth. Suicide rates among this age group have escalated to an all-time high, while drug and alcohol abuse-related conditions have become top reported killers. Simultaneously, this populace is leaving the church by the scores, while such religions as New Age, Wicca, and Muslimism continue to gain momentum. Are millennials really the narcissistic, self-centered, entitled, and lazy collective that they are accused of being, or is there a deeper problem lurking which creates division between this generation and those previous? Are young people today truly the worst the world has ever seen, or has our modern church missed the opportunity to reach the most cause-oriented, activist generation in the history of the world? Furthermore, if the church were to combine efforts with this powerful, zealous populace, could this usher in the next Great Awakening? These and many other questions and answers make up the pages of this new book, authored by Allie Anderson, a credentialed private investigator that oversees the research arm of Skywatch TV and Defender Publishing. Her exploratory works have appeared in numerous books, documentaries, magazines, and television specials. Her contributions to Time Bomb led to undercover fact-finding involving GMOs, harmful chemicals, and processed foods, and how consumers can avoid these detriments. Here to discuss her breakthrough new book, Unscrambling the Millennial Paradox, Why the Unreachables May Be Key to the Next Great Awakening. It's my pleasure to welcome Allie Anderson to the program. Allie, welcome to Revealing the Truth.
Thank you so much.
It's great to have you on. Millennials, a word that carries with it a lot of scratching ahead. An age group, my daughter she'll be 30 on July 18th, and she doesn't want to be called a millennial. She thinks she's relevant. She thinks she's not entitled. She left home to go out on her own at 17 and work, and she's expecting our first grandchild in 4 weeks. So she's gone out and done things and acquired skills, and she sees that as a misnomer and as a label. But this label is out there, and this label is sticking in a way that is being applied, and I think it's being misapplied. It's a paintbrush, a big fat paint roller that seems to go across a whole spectrum based on an age bracket, that maybe we need to understand what was intended when this generation was named millennials. So let's start there.
Well, I believe that it was intended that they were named millennials because they were at the turn of the millennium. And I feel like probably the previous generations thought, this is the generation of tomorrow. But I think they didn't realize what kind of tomorrow they were signing on for when they named these guys the millennials. And now we have the post-millennials, which are those who were born 1997 to present. And I used both terms interchangeably rather than to say millennials and post-millennials. That's a whole lot of saying the word millennials. So I just call them all millennials. But at 1997, we really do have a break where now they're called the post-millennials. And, they're a generation unlike anything the world has seen. It's hard to get into without really diving in. But for this moment, I'll truncate and say the world changed a lot in about 50 years. And trends that have been hiding in plain sight for 200 years, like postmodernism, kind of culminated into a whole new level of insanity. And in addition to all the other things that have happened economically and with identity politics and the digital interface, which has completely changed and revolutionized the entire way that we interact with each other, you have a generation of people who are facing a world that is unlike anything. And there's a disconnect with their elders because in some ways we just can't relate with them. And it isolates them and it frustrates them. And then they begin to act entitled and do things like that. And so then we say, well, you guys are entitled and you guys are me, me, me. And it's just getting worse with all this, disconnect and communication gap for sure.
Is it true that this generation, because I'm going to back up. I identify as the first post-Holocaust generation. That's kind of our Jewish identity.
Okay.
We were the first generation after the Holocaust born. Our families came from Eastern Europe to America. We were the brave new world. We were the first native English speakers. We were the first native American education. We educated our families. They didn't educate us. They educated us in Hebrew and in Judaism and in our Jewish roots and heritage of the identity of who we were, but nobody really had an explanation for why, other than anti-Semitism. I've come to find out now that I'm a believer, it all had to do with killing the line of Jesus. It began long ago and will continue until the final end, when the perpetrator who's trying to kill Jesus is finally taken out of the picture. Kind of a simple plot line, but one that's complex and wrapped around in 66 books. But still, that's the underlying theme, is there's one who, if he takes Jesus out, then he remains prince of this world. But the world I grew up in was a brave new world. We set the tone. We created the new music. We created the new genre. We created what was important and what wasn't important. And there was prayer in school, and it was very unstructured. We were the beginning of the drug culture. We were the beginning of the make love not war. We had a cause. We had Vietnam. We had things to protest, and we protested. We were vocal. We were defiant. We took over. I was the vice president of the student body at Penn State. We took over Old Main. We took over the administration. And so when I look at the millennials, I say, are we missing the fact that they are truly a reflection of this post-Holocaust, this baby boomer generation that redefined America, and now America is being not redefined, but being refined. And in this refinement, there is now something called purpose. And if something doesn't have a purpose, I don't have a reason to get out of bed. So, okay, I'm entitled. I don't have a reason to go get a job because I have no purpose. We then label that entitlement, and you want to move back home. But until we give people purpose, we miss out on a real key to unlock a door to incredible minds and incredible energy and skill sets. We just came back from Israel. I don't know if you went on the trip with Derek and the rest of the team or not, but one of the young millennials on the trip with us took and videoed the whole time he was there, just using his phone, and created a 5.5 minute video set to a Christian song and put it out there on Vimeo. It is one of the most moving, stirring visuals of Israel, just capturing and connecting with the words of the song, The View. So you're kind of taking on this journey. That's a skill set. That's a modern day millennial skill set that is not taught in the schools. It's something that has been, because of video games and because of this Xbox and PlayStation, and we had pinball machines and we had pool, and we had bowling alleys, and all these other things that we had growing up. We didn't develop those skills, but these are amazing artistic skills that it seems like we would be, instead of being critical and pointing the finger, we would be uplifting, encouraging, and guiding and directing and taking on the responsibility of adults, saying, how do you channel and harness this energy? But that doesn't seem to be the case.
Well, I think that to some degree, and again, it comes back to the way a lot of the world has changed. With previous generations, we had kind of a template for how growing up and turning into an adult and all these things worked. And each generation, which, by the way, usually were raised with both parents in the home, they were able to sow this pattern into their children. And yes, there was some friction as children came of age and came into their own, but there was kind of a similar pattern from generation to generation. Now what we have is a situation where the older generation doesn't completely know how to coax the younger generation into this development of skills and finding your place in the world, kind of like what you're talking about with this young man who made this video, because there are so many tools out there that we're not even aware of. I mean, it's kind of a joke. I'm old. I don't know how to use my phone. But the truth is, these things that these younger people have available to them to maybe use to plug into their purpose or to find things, a lot of older people don't know yet how to coax them and coach them into finding their place. And at the same time, the immersion of the digital interface has caused people who used to go out and interact with each other to isolate behind a screen. And there are a whole lot of reasons why that's detrimental. One, you're not interacting with other people. You're not developing the social skills. You're not developing the emotional connections. You're also not developing the understanding of how much you need each other. And remember that people are all, every last one of us, created in the image of God. And so the need for communion with each other and communion with our Maker and all of those needs are there. But to a younger generation who, a lot of them have spent a lot of time alone at home watching television or playing video games, there's the knowledge that something's missing. And yet, because they haven't experienced it, especially those raised by single parents, and that's not a dig on a single parent, by the way. Life doesn't always turn out the way you expect. Some people find themselves single parents one day for one reason or another. But the children who have spent a lot of time at home behind a screen, not only are they without those connections and those interactions, and even the simple things that stimulate the senses, the hugging of parents and grandchildren. A lot of people don't even physically touch anymore. And that stimulates different places within the brain. There are neural connectors that simply atrophy if they are not used regularly. And so the digital interface has isolated. If you look at this modern generation, we call them the me generation, a generation of narcissists, but they're also the most isolated, the most abandoned, the most fatherless. And so they've been, some of them, their entire lives without a certain kind of connectivity with other people that has also not been stimulated. And so while they are knowing something's missing and trying to kind of find it, a lot of them become misdirected in that search. And so when you look at things like the activism that is really occupying the time of the millennial generation. The protests, they are also protesting, and they are parades, things that they are being very active about. This is their way of trying to plug in and find that very purpose that you're talking about. And it's also a part of why, if we can plug them back into the church, if we can make the church relevant to them, then what we can do is put them in a place where they will find their purpose, and a purpose that's something that's God ordained, a purpose that gives them an opportunity to become active in a way that they see as relevant. And it's life-changing. It lasts beyond the age of their lifetime. It lasts beyond the geographic scope of their area. And it puts them in a place where they connect with their destiny and their legacy. And ultimately, that's what they're asking the church for in the first place. But it's what you're talking about, helping them to come out of this place of isolation where it's kind of all about me, because that's kind of all they know to some degree, for some of them, and put them into a place where they find a skill set. And it can be something radical. Not everybody goes to church and is a nursery worker. Some people do what you're doing, what you're talking about, make these videos, travel and make videos, even if it's not necessarily of the region that you were traveling, somebody who is a hiker that's doing this over mountain ranges and then is putting these videos over songs that discuss the glory of God and the manifestation of his creation and how that shows his splendor. All of these things are radical ideas, and that's what the young people are needing. And I agree with you. I think they're isolated, and I think they haven't plugged into their purpose, and it's a huge part of the problem, and that's a big part of what the book's about.
Allie, something struck a nerve with you. Something caused you to realize that there is a huge disconnect, and that the key, this great awakening, this hope for the next revival. You and I have both been around long enough to know that people have been chasing the next great move of the Spirit, the next Brownsville, the next Azusa Street, the next the Skywatch Conference, the next breakout of signs and wonders, when you really should be scratching your head wondering, why am I not seeing signs, as opposed to chasing after signs and wonders. But something pressed in you. Somebody touched you. Somebody, either one of your children, or one of your children's friends, or someone in your life. Something pushed on a place in you that you found to be a deep hurt, that caused you to write this, because you see this as a wound in society that needs to be healed, and there's a way to heal it, and we're not doing it. What was it that you saw? What was it that you felt that was so compelling to you? Because one of the things that I can say unequivocally about every one of Defender's authors is that there is a passion in every piece. There's nothing that's written for, Mike Heiser and I are great friends, Mike Lake and I are great friends, Derek and I are great friends, but all of them there is a personal part in there that's the passion piece of every one of these. They're never written just because somebody needs another book on UFOs aren't really UFOs, or it's a passion. What was the passion in you that said, if I don't do this, I'm going to explode?
Well, there are a few layers to that answer. One is, and I'm not a millennial, I'm a Generation X. I have a millennial and a post-millennial child. And backing up to my early 20s, I'm a pastor's kid, and I was raised in church, but I will be honest with you, in my early 20s, I had a period of rebellion. It lasted a little under a year, and this period of time was just kind of a transition of me going from believing what I believe because it's what I was raised in this house with parents who believed it, to finding my own reasons for believing that. Eventually did rededicate and, repented not in just the way that you say, oh, I'm sorry, God, but I mean, you repent, you turn around, you go the other way, and you don't turn back. But during this period of time, there were some tough questions that I was trying to find the answer to. And there were well-meaning people in the church, and they were trying to understand what I was asking, but I wasn't getting the question through. And my questions at the time were pretty complicated. But I remember people taking the time to talk to me, but not really understanding what I was saying. And because they didn't understand, they weren't really able to help me. So it's not as dramatic as saying the church failed me, but it was simply a period of time I never forgot what that felt like, not being able to get my question articulated and to find an answer. And eventually, through stumbling through my own rebellion, I did figure out the answers. And that's different than what the millennials are facing. I think what I'm talking about was kind of something a lot of people do when they're in their early 20s, and also, especially if you're a pastor's kid. And so that was a little bit different. But then, I have a post-millennial and a millennial, and they have had their own obstacles in the way that the world works, and they've had to make some adjustments, and they've had some tough things get thrown at them, especially my son, who's a millennial, who in the book I talk about paintballing with him. And I've watched some of the struggles that he's gone through, and I remember at the time, calling Tom, who is my dad, and saying, one of these days, and this is not the book, it's a different book, and that one's still forthcoming. This is a different book that I'm also passionate about, but I remember calling him one day and saying, when I get to the bottom of some of the things we're dealing with together, my son and I, there's got to be a book, because right now there is no guidepost for a person dealing with this. There's no, it's just, these are really tough questions, and finding the answers, it's like you're groping your way through the dark, looking for information. And that's for the seeker that's really trying to turn over stones and really dig. And when I decide to dig, I dig. So if I can't find the answers, I'm pretty confident they're not readily available to most people. And so that became something that then we kind of made it through those obstacles. But then what happened? So from that period of time with my son, fast forward about 2 years, and I talk about the road trip to Virginia, and I was with Tom Horn, Joe Horn, Donna Howell, and myself, and we had a business trip take us to Virginia. This is about October of 2018. And he says to me, did you read the stories that I sent you? And he had sent me some news links, and I said, I haven't had time yet. I was too busy getting ready to come on this trip, but when we get back, I plan to read them right away. And he said, well, I want to know, can you tell me why this young generation, and he started to rattle off statistics, and I've got them actually right here. Suicide has become the second highest killer of people ages 15 to 24. 15 is extremely young for suicide. Any age, suicide's terrible, but 15, these people don't even know. They don't know anything about life yet. How can they decide they don't want to live it? You know, the second highest killer, the only thing that outranks suicide right now for that age group is car accidents. 160,000 per year are hospitalized for self-inflicted injuries. That means that on top of the fact that suicide is the second highest killer, 160,000 per year are trying and not succeeding. Maybe they'll try again and they'll become part of next year's statistics. This is horrible, but the one that really gripped me, and this one just threw me totally for a loop. And that is, I remember when I was younger, the big scare was HIV. And it's still a formidable threat. But cirrhosis of the liver, specifically related to alcohol abuse, has now replaced HIV as the sixth leading killer of people ages 25 to 44. So let me back up and restate something real quick here. Cirrhosis of the liver, not related to some other health condition that causes cirrhosis to become a condition, but specifically related to alcohol abuse, is the sixth leading killer, replacing HIV at the age starting 25 years old. Now, how many years do you have to self-medicate with alcohol before you begin to drink yourself into a state of cirrhosis of the liver specifically related to alcohol? That means that by the time you're 25 and you have that condition, you've been self-medicating in a heavy way for a lot of years. How frightening is that? These are our children. Our children. They're not even old enough to take an ibuprofen at school without the nurse's or mom's permission. And they've got cirrhosis of the liver already on the way. That just, to me, that hit me in a place I can't explain, because I thought of both of my kids, who both, neither one, are 25 yet. And I'm looking at that and I'm thinking, how devastating. But 25, that's just too young. And yet, you look at the same generation and they're leaving the church in numbers we can't even count. 59% of millennials raised in church have already left. That's not counting those who will never there and maybe will never go. And on top of it, you have the rapid escalation of New Age, Satanism, Muslimism, Wicca. These other movements are growing. So these people aren't saying we're the generation who have no affiliation with spiritualism. They're not saying we don't want to be spiritual in any way. It's not a generation of atheists. In fact, atheism is on the decline. So what is it? It's something they're searching for that the church has not figured out how to meet. And not only are they out searching for it, but they're in so much pain. They're killing themselves in one way or another. That breaks my heart. And I realize that my kids have been through obstacles, but that they have so far, they've managed to find a way beyond the pain and the suffering and the things that has been thrown at their generation and at them as individuals without turning to these things. But I cannot imagine the day as a mother that I would get that phone call. And so something in that just made me connect all of those things I've just told you and say, this needs a good investigation, and that's kind of where
that's
this book
exactly what
happened.
Unscrambling the Millennial Paradox is a very, very good investigation. I'm looking at a staggering number. I had no idea that in this year we're in, 2019, millennials will outnumber baby boomers for the first time. There will be more millennials than baby boomers. That's shocking to me. That's a stunning statistic that says we're looking at all of these programs of Medicare, of dementia, of elder care, all these things, when we have a generation larger than this generation that I'm a part of, your dad's a part of, that we are looking at a generation coming up that's going to spend, they've got 60, 70 years ahead of them to navigate, and they're struggling with issues that are bringing them early death because the problems are overwhelming to them, or appear to be overwhelming to them, because there's people who are not listening, and it's that attentive ear in trying to unscramble the Millennial Paradox. We're talking with Allie Anderson, author of the newly released book, Unscrambling the Millennial Paradox, Why the Unreachables May Be Key to the Next Great Awakening. I'm going to change that to why they are the key, not maybe the key, because I believe in my heart of hearts that they are the key to the revival that this nation and this world so desperately needs. We're going to take a short break, and when we come back, we're going to continue this discussion with Allie Anderson, author of Unscrambling the Millennial Paradox. We'll be right back. Not everything that makes the headlines has biblical importance, but many events that happen around the world do, and you never hear about them. Igniting a Nation is pleased to teach Revealing Prophecy every Tuesday night at 7 p.m. at the Marriott 280 in Birmingham. We will cover worldwide events and insider information that will connect the dots of what's happening around the world with biblical prophecy. If you happen to miss a class, we'll televise each week's class at 10 o'clock Central Time on ignitinganation.com and all our social media outlets. Copies of the teachings will also be available to purchase on our website at www.ignitinganation.com. The Lord meets you right where you are, and so does Igniting a Nation's new live streaming outlets. You can now watch Revealing the Truth, Revealing the Bible, and Prophecy Revealed simulcast live each Monday through Friday from 10 a.m. to 1 o'clock p.m. Central Standard Time on YouTube Live, Facebook Live, Vimeo, Periscope, and through our website, www.ignitinganation.com. No matter what device you are using, our program will automatically scale so you won't have to miss a single program. And if you happen to miss an episode, you can always subscribe to the Igniting a Nation YouTube channel and access over 1,000 interviews and never miss your favorite authors, special guests, and topics that interest you the most.
There are lots of ways to see Israel, but nothing compares to seeing the land of the book and the people of the book through the eyes of two Jewish believers who can take you on a journey that will bring the entire Bible to life. When you join Rabbi Eric Walker and his #1 rated tour guide, Edo Canaan, in Israel, you'll experience incredible teachings, first-class accommodations, and actually walk where Jesus walked. You will experience the Bible transforming from black and white into living color, and you will never see the Bible in the same way again. For more information, visit us at www.ignitinganation.com/events.
The Lord contends with what contends with you, and Igniting a Nation is committed to bringing to light each and every issue that faces a believer's life. Our live stream programming and teachings take you on a journey to finding biblical truth from a wide variety of experts who share their insights into a deeper walk with the Lord. We have assembled the most comprehensive panel of experts in the fields of prophecy, caregiving, healing from trauma, shame, and abuse, and so much more. We continue to expand our teachings and programming to meet your needs. We're committed to healing the nations with biblical truth. Visit www.ignitinganation.com to develop a deeper walk with the Lord and start your journey to a transformed life. The Bible commands us to study to show ourselves approved, but most study using Bible study tools and not actually studying the Bible chapter and verse. Igniting a Nation is pleased to present Revealing the Bible, recorded and taught each week before a live audience. We take you deeper into the actual Bible and verse in both Hebrew and English and connect the dots between the Old and New Testament. You can attend our 2 classes in Tuscaloosa and Birmingham or watch the program every Wednesday at 11 a.m. Central Time on ignitinganation.com and all our other simulcast outlets. For more information, visit www.ignitinganation.com/events. Shalom and welcome back to this edition of Revealing the Truth, where we cover the headlines, the heartlines, and biblical truth. I'm your host, the Reverend Rabbi Eric Walker, and we're talking with Allie Anderson, author of Unscrambling the Millennial Paradox, Why the Unreachables May Be Key to the Next Great Awakening. Allie, welcome back to the show.
Thank you so much. It's an honor.
Well, it's great to have you here, Allie. This is so important. This is so much for our time, and so much that people don't know. And I'm gonna reach out to the leaders right now, and we have leaders around the world. This program is watched right now. We're prime time in the Middle East, Asia, Africa, and parts of Europe, especially. Israel, Pakistan, there are targeted markets where we are live prime time for a very specific reason, and that's because we're bringing a message of the great commission, not the great omission, and that is we're going to preach to the Muslims and the Jews the gospel of Jesus and the good news that the reason why you and I a Jew who have come to faith, you a Gentile who has come to faith, can be one in Messiah and share a passion for the same foundational truth of taking this generation, these image bearers that don't know that they're image bearers. So they don't have, they're classified in a negative light. Therefore, they're, as image bearers, they're being segregated and attacked and not elevated to the status of you and I, of respect and admiration, of love and consideration and compassion, inclusion and focusing in on it as equal status image bearers. All of a sudden they're in a classification. This is what we've done when we put a name label. Okay? In the Bible there's only 2 people, Jews and Gentiles. That's all there is. That's all there is in the world. There are not anything else. This idea of ethnos and then age-nos, or whatever it is that we've done where we've classified these generations, done nothing but put wedges and walls between people groups, and it's got to stop, and it has to stop with those that are the truth speakers, and that's the pastor taking on the role of the black robe regimen that brought America its independence, because it was the pastors that stood up and took a stand and brought about change. And so this appeal is to those who are leaders in the community, whether or not they're social leaders, they're political leaders, they're environmental leaders, they're pastoral leaders, that you need to rise up and answer this call to help unravel this millennial paradox and equip and incline your ear to listen to the words and understand what they're saying when they say church isn't relevant. Jesus is not relevant, meaning it's not making the environment better. It's not changing things in the community. You guys have 38,000 denominations. You can't even get along amongst yourself, and you all call yourself Christians. Okay? It's not a matter of millennials or Gen Xers or baby boomers. You can't get along and you all have the same name. Now you're driving this wedge in between us. So, Allie, what can we do? How do we start the narrative? Where do we begin in knocking on the door and having somebody open and say, hey, come on in. Let's have a conversation. Let's talk. Okay? These are the coffee drinkers. These are the ones who go to the Paneras and the Starbucks and will sit down with you and have a cup of coffee and a conversation. So how do we have those conversation starters?
Well, I would say that the first thing to take note of is to be encouraged, because the answer is not simple in the sense that it works quickly. It will take a long time to reach a whole generation for Christ. A sweeping revival would be really helpful, and if it catches on with these young people, it can catch fast, and it can be like a brush fire that moves through this country. But getting that ball rolling may take a little time. However, the answer is completely simple in that you can start right now today with what you have, with who you are. It does not require a big fancy facility. In fact, some of the well-meaning churches who have updated their facilities are now being accused by the same young generation as coming off as fake. So it's not necessarily that they want big flashy programs and fog machines during your worship service and all these big fancy coffee shops in the lobby of the church. Those are nice things, and if you have a big following and they're happy that that's there, then I'm happy for you. But you can be a small mission church with 5 people who attend, and you can begin to reach your community in the same way, because what they're looking for is more organic than something that costs all this money and requires all this effort. What they're looking for a very large part is transparency. Now, I remember, again, as a pastor's kid, I remember church 40 years ago when the pastor had to make it look like his life was very together and the family didn't have any problems. This younger generation wants to know that the pastor is a real person, that the pastor, his car breaks down too, and, his plumbing at home backs up too, and all the same random little life struggles that hit everybody else, maybe even ones that are more significant than that. They need to know that their pastor relates to them. And this is also leadership in the church, and eventually, the whole body of the church. It can be very simple. You can start now. And the thing that I would say to people who feel like, well, my facility isn't fancy enough, an old facility that's clean is vintage. And these guys love vintage. So don't let a facility hold you back. Prepare your facility to the best of your ability. And then, I did not mean to rhyme just now. And then give the rest to God and work to reach your community. I will tell you a very important thing to note about this young generation. 2 things, actually. Number 1, they see 5,000 ads per day. So they are very quick. They make fast decisions. If you have an ulterior motive, they can smell a rat. If you're sincere, they're going to notice it. The other thing is that they can stream or drop ship anything to their house at 3 clicks of a button. If they show up in the flesh at your church, they're not looking for a worship service that sounds like a concert. They're not looking for a big fancy sermon that was written with poetic undertones. They're looking for an interpersonal connection with another human being. That's what they're looking for, because anything else in the world they can have brought to their living room any day of the week, day or night, and they can sit there in the comfort of their house coat and drink coffee and watch it. So what they're looking for when they come to you is a personal interaction. They're looking for a sense of community. And the community they're looking for is not a club that meets on Sundays and sings a couple rounds of songs and goes home and pats themselves on the back. They are looking for people who do crazy, radical, organic things that reach the community and later the world. So handing out sack lunches, what you were talking about your friends who go out and clean up trash. I mean, this is the kind of stuff that's going to get the attention of the younger generation. And the one thing I really need to make sure I say is that in all of this, scriptural truth is not compromised. But see, if you're building a community with these people and you're interacting with them in love, and know that they are going to bring the hard questions, they are. But if you have built a foundation of friendship and love, when you speak the scriptural truth that may not be what they want to hear, they're still going to have a feeling of love and friendship or mutual respect toward you, because you've established that relationship with them, which is a huge part of what they're looking for. The world is really a confusing place for these young people right now, and they are looking, like you and I have already discussed today, they're looking for a place that their work goes beyond their life, beyond their geographical area, beyond their lifetime. These young people are activists in every way they can get their hands on because they are looking to change the world. And so if they go to church and it's kind of stale and it's kind of dead and it feels irrelevant to them and it feels like yesterday's tradition, then they are going to find another way to spend their time. But if they go and they become part of a dialogue within the church, that is, how do we reach our community? How do we feed the hungry? How do we clothe the cold and shelter the homeless? How do we really do, by the way, what Jesus speaks of in the parable of the sheep and the goats? If your church can take that parable and activate it within your community and do things to catch the attention of the millennials and engage in transparent, honest dialogue with them, even admitting that you don't know the answer when they ask you a biblical question, then you invite them to find that answer in Scripture with you. These are the things that are going to reach the young generation. So when we talk about leaving behind the old, it's really important that we don't misconstrue what we're trying to say. Leaving behind the old does not mean quit teaching scriptural truth. It's old-fashioned. That is not what it means. It does not mean quit having an altar call. It does not mean quit taking communion. It means quit getting stuck in the routine of what might have been the way a previous generation responds and be willing to open up to some new methods of delivery. Whether it is, we're going to, instead of a Bible study Wednesday night, we're going to, like you said, we're going to go to the local park and we're going to hand out blankets that have our church name. By the way, that's not my idea. You gave me that idea today, and that's amazing. That's a great idea. I did know a church that, they rent a booth every year at this certain festival. And this festival always happens in August when it's like 110 degrees outside. It's so hot. And because it's so hot during this festival, all of the beverage booths, lemonade and whatever they're selling to drink, it's $5 a drink. And these drinks are 8 ounces, and half an hour later, you and all the kids are thirsty again because it's 1,000,000 degrees outside. This church every single year sits there and hands out free bottles of water. And they have a little sign. It's got their church name on it. And it says something to the degree of, be blessed with a drink of cold water in the name of Jesus. It's something real close to that. They don't charge. They just sit there all day long in the heat and hand out cold water. And I'm telling you, they get more traffic than you can imagine because it's so hot outside on those days. And, these are the things that let millennial aged people know you care, you're active in your community. And if you have ulterior motives, if you get to know somebody with the attitude of, I'm going to invest in you and I'm going to be your friend, I'm going to try 5 interactions like this, and then I'm going to invite you to church. And we'll see from there whether or not I continue to invest in you. A lot of Christians operate from that place, and they mean well, but a millennial can smell that out, and they don't want any part of it. They don't want any part of an ulterior motive. But if you really, truly care about them or care about your community, and you just let the love of Jesus shine through you because it's who he called you to be, to show his love to those who are lost, who were made in his image, who, by the way, he also died for and does not deem as unreachable. When we can do that as Christians, we can connect with this younger generation. And when that generation gets behind the Great Commission, look out, world, because you've never seen anything like what's coming. I get excited thinking about it because that's the kind of thing that's going to ignite this young generation for God. And all these other things that are sweeping their attention and capturing their affections right now could begin to decline if this would become an upsurge in their interest. And all it takes is for us to activate the church in a way that they see as relevant, in a way that they see shows them the love of God, and in a way that they can get involved in and plug into and feel like they're part of it.
Allie, this was the Reformation. This is what happened 500 years ago when the staid Roman Catholic Church began to govern. They formed into a governing body, much like Islam is today, where it has its set of civil impact, where there's laws associated. It's overwhelming. And you become so caught up in so many things you just miss the message completely because you have to perform at this Cirque du Soleil level. Well, the reformers are having these same conversations as they're facing their own millennial paradox, with a rising group of people that are walking away, that are saying we're not being fed. There's got to be more to this. All we know is about the mother. We know about the saints, and we know about the catechism, but there's this thing out there called God, and we don't know the first thing about creation. There's actually people asking us questions. We can't give them the answers, and we've been going to church 7 days a week, 5 times a day, lighting candles, doing all these things, and we know absolutely nothing about how to live this life, and we're talking about just 500 years ago. Here today we have another generation that says, listen, I'm surrounded by a world that's in a country, United States, as an example. I'm in this United States, and we're the land of opportunity, and we're Judeo-Christian values, but 60% are divorced, and there's just as many people in jail, and there's pornography, and there's infidelity, there's all this stuff. What does it mean? And they don't seem to be any different. They don't have any different problems than we have. They don't have any different solutions that we have. They don't have any answers. So if they don't know, we'll just come up with our own. We'll throw, people disagree with us, we'll throw mud on them. Okay, that's what we'll do. If somebody's going to talk about something we don't agree with, well, we'll just talk louder than they do. And so it's unchanneled, it's unbridled, but it's energy, and it's a desire, it's a scream, a cry for help, to say, I want there to be change in the world, and I feel helpless to do something about it. Here you then have the church, who is created to be helpful, to help with social injustice, to help with issues of life and how to navigate life using the Word of God. And they're shunning a generation. They're actually railing against them from the pulpit, as opposed to rolling out the welcome mat and saying, you know what, this Sunday, okay, we're not having church in the building. This Sunday, we're all going to the park. And if you don't like going to the park, I don't care. That's where we're meeting. So if we normally have 400 on Sunday and we only have 100 in the park, that's what we're going to do. Because this park happens to have at this hour a bunch of guitar strumming, groups of 4, 5, and 6 gathered together. And guess what? We're going to come up, and we've called a local company that has a coffee and donut truck, and it's coming, and we're going to hang our banner, and we're going to be all outside of there, and it's free to anybody who wants to walk up and get a cup of coffee and a donut, and we're just going to do our thing, which is play music and have some songs and then have a message. No sound system, everything is going to be unplugged, and this is what we're going to do for all of the months, the spring months, all the summer months. This is what we're going to do. This is where church is going to be held, is we're going to go to these places, and we're going to go to where the people are. And so what? Okay, first of all, you're saving a whole ton of money because you're not running the electric bill. Okay, this is a great, and you're actually taking the message to the people. Now, is that relevant? Can be very relevant if we can engage. It can be very relevant if somebody says, well, you know what, young man, you have something you want to say. Come on up here. All right, here's 100 people. Here's your audience. Okay, here's the rules. Okay, we would appreciate no profanity, but if it slips out of your mouth, nobody is going to come against you and shout you down. Okay, we'd like it to be done in decency and order, but if that's the only way you know how to communicate, then just get your message out. What is it that you're mad about? What is it you're not happy with? What is it that you'd like to say to these people that don't understand you? And I'm going to give you 15 minutes. Tell us what's going on in your life. Tell us what's happening with you and your friends. What's going on? And give them a voice.
I think the place that what you're suggesting, I think the place a lot of churches get intimidated by something like that is, what will this person say and what kind of debate will come out of it? There are some big debates out there right now, and I think that there are a lot of ministers who are overwhelmed by the idea of engaging in those debates because they don't know how to present the truth without chasing people away, and it's a big problem. But at the same time, if the debate can change gears and become a dialogue and can be done in mutual respect, then there's a way that we can talk to these people. And what I've been saying is this: if you make a person argue their position, that's where all their energy will go. But if you will let them, just breathe and present the truth of God, and also in love, and let them know that they are loved because God loved them. We don't need a better reason than that. We have to love everybody, and we do love everybody because Jesus died for them, because they are loved by God, because he first loved us, because we are made in the image of God, and so our job is to show this love. And so if we can just dialogue with these people without it being contingent on whether or not we agree, you know what I'm saying? And that's tough. It's very tough in church, and especially once you start getting into who's going to be in church leadership and how's that going to go. That's a much more complicated situation, and I do actually discuss that in the book as well. You know, but if we can get to a place where they don't feel like it's a threat to say what they feel, and they can have a conversation with us without feeling like our response will be what they consider to be hate speech. And that's tricky as well, because hate speech is really subjective, depending on the position of the moral majority, which I also discuss. But I will say one thing. The last chapter of the book switches gears. The first several chapters of the book, it's explaining kind of where the millennials are and kind of talking about churches and how some of the things they say, it's kind of different than what they really mean when they say what they want. But then the last chapter is a note to the millennials, because to take an entire book to defend their position without the balance of saying, okay, now here's what you need to know about some of the older people. Here's why they do what they do, and here's where they're coming from. It wouldn't be well-rounded without expecting also the younger people to understand where you ministers are coming from, and you church leadership. You have a reason you do the things you do and why you've done it the way you've done it. And it's fair to defend that as well. And so I don't want you to feel like the book is one-sided, because both positions are defended and explained in the book, and it needs to be that way.
Well, it's extremely well written. I think it is something that breaks this down. It does unscramble the Millennial Paradox, as it's entitled, a book by Allie Anderson. This is a challenge. You don't have to take the whole church out there, but a small group, maybe one of your small groups is the small group that's assigned with engaging the millennials and bringing the message back to leadership. Maybe that's their message, is we want to know what's bothering you and how we can better serve your needs. Isn't that what we're doing with the generation that's my generation? What do you need as you age? We have meals, we have all these things that we're willing to do. You need a ride to your doctor's appointment. You're now in the geriatric category. This baby boomer generation is now going to be less populated than the millennials. So why not give us a 50-year head start on how to serve their needs throughout the course of their life, as opposed to wait until they get to be our age, when you're starting to dig out the need for, we need more defibrillators around the facility. We have to get more wheelchairs to get more people in. This is an opportunity for us to enter in at the exact time these ideas and problems are occurring, and help craft solutions that are going to gird the church up for the future, not dealing with the problems of the past, but dealing with today. And that's exactly the message and contained in Unscrambling the Millennial Paradox, Why the Unreachables May Be Key to the Next Great Awakening by Allie Anderson. If you have a heart for the young people, for your children, for those in your congregations, and for those who are rising up and these statistics are staggering, then this is a book you must read. Allie Anderson, thank you Thank you for sharing
you
this
so much.
incredible story with us here on Revealing the Truth. God bless you, my friend. We're going to take a short
Thank
break.
you so much.
And when we come back, we'll bring you the next edition of Revealing the Truth.